Hello my friends, welcome to my channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. I'm Lindy and I do read a lot. Today I'm going to tell you about 5 books that I've finished recently. 3 of those are by queer authors, and actually a 4th one, could almost call that one queer too, because it's a Korean novel in which a woman magically transforms into a man. And I'm also going to talk about 3 graphic novels, and one of those is about Jewish experiences during the Holocaust. Those are the books, but before I get to them, I want to wish my sister Zan a happy birthday. Today is January 7th, and it is her birthday today. I recently baked a cake. I wish she was here to have some of it. This is the 2nd time that I've made this recipe. It's an orange and rosemary olive oil cake from a cookbook that Hetty McKinnon wrote. I will have details in the description box down below. And the way that I decorated it was very simple. I just cut out a paper snowflake, laid it on top of the cake, sprinkled icing sugar on top, lifted off the paper, and that's how I got the design. But speaking of snow and snowflakes, according to the weather report, we might be getting snow here in Victoria this coming week. We shall see. It's nice enough for me to be filming this outdoors. Yeah, let's get to the books. I'm going to save the best for last, as per usual, but there are several excellent 5-star books on here, including this first one. It's Whale by Cheon Meyong-Kwan, and it's translated from Korean by Chi-Young Kim. It was first written over 20 years ago, but only just recently translated into English. Content definitely stands up over the course of time. It is covering a pretty epic sweep of history in South Korea, mainly about a mother, Gyeongbok, and her daughter Chun-hui. The storytelling style is what really grabbed me. It's very unique. The author uses the phrase "dear reader" quite often, as well as "this is the law of blah blah blah," to a very humorous effect. It's got a folkloric or sort of mythic feel to it. So one of the sort of mythic things that happens is that the mother, Gyeongbok, at some point transforms into a man. Anyway, there are some very brutal, traumatic kind of things that happen, like rape and torture. So be prepared for that, but be also prepared to be charmed by this. I want to read a little bit from it to give you an idea of what I'm talking about with style here. Miraculously, Gyeongbok survived those war-torn years, but let us move on from stories about war and save that for another day. Reader, I ask for your understanding. It goes beyond the scope of this book and requires even more pages and even more time, along with courage and tears, to move through the pain. Later, after Gyeongbok is transformed into a man, there is a reporter who talks to them because they've had this movie theater built in the shape of a whale. Oh, yeah, I have to show you the image that's in the book that Gyeongbok shows the architect. This is how I want you to build this theater. And then this is the image we see. Anyway, after the interview, off the record, the young reporter asked him, "Dear reader, from now on, let's refer to Guillaume Buck as he. In this day and age, when you can easily change your name on official records, we can certainly change genders mid-story." What it was like to become a man. And as far as suspension of disbelief, I think this is right from the beginning of the book. By its very nature, a story contains adjustments and embellishments depending on the perspective of the person telling it, depending on the listener's convenience, depending on the storyteller's skills. Reader, you will believe what you want to believe. That's all there is to it. Yeah. Believe me, this book was fantastic. And it was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize last year. So I heard about it then. But the reason that I picked it up recently is because Charlotte Malloy talked about it on her booktube channel. I will link that down below in the description box. It was one of her top books of 2023. And the way that she spoke about it, I just thought, yeah, that sounds fantastic. And I'm really glad I read it. So thank you, Charlotte. And there's another booktuber that I want to thank for this next book I'm going to be telling you about. And that's Natalie of Curious Reader. In talking about her reading plans for 2024, she mentioned Heartstopper Volume 5. I did not even know that Volume 5 had come out already, so I immediately put my name on the waiting list at the library here in Victoria, and I was like something like number 92 in line. I can't remember how many copies. But then when I went to the library that day or the next one to pick up something else that was on hold, there it was on the fast reads shelf. And this is the third book that I've picked up from those shelves that are popular books. And in Edmonton, they call it something else, whatever, but it's only 1 week loan periods. So I assumed that it was 1 week loans, and even though they have these big labels on them, I didn't see until I had this one out that you've actually got 14 days, so 2 weeks to read it. But it only took me a day. I have finished it already. And Alice Oseman continues to be great. I only took off 1/4 of a star on this because it's in green and black, this pale green, and in some cases there are text messages with white on that light green, and there's just not enough contrast for these old eyes of mine, but that's only a small complaint. I love these two characters, Nick and Charlie. If you're not familiar, they're both in high school, but Nick is a year ahead of Charlie, and so he's going to be finishing a year earlier. And he wants to go off to university, but he doesn't really know what he wants to study. And he's also extremely reluctant to leave Charlie. So he's debating that, just the uncertainty of his future. And Charlie, meanwhile, is recovering from an eating disorder, but still seeing a therapist regularly, and still struggling with body image issues. And these things are portrayed so realistically, and yet it's also so sweet and light. It's very uplifting to read. I love how Nick picks up Charlie. Charlie's much smaller than he is and likes to swing him around. And I really like the way that Oseman shows when they have a passionate kiss, the world kind of dissolves around them, and there's flowers and other representations of these kinds of feelings that they're having, intense feelings. And in this volume, the two boys are also exploring maybe they're ready to take their relationship to another level. So it's so much fun. Next is another graphic novel. So this one is based on true stories, or I should say inspired by true stories set during the Holocaust. So true stories of courage and bravery amidst so many deaths. The author Neal Shusterman, who is Jewish American, has written 5 stories, and 4 of them include Jewish folkloric elements like Baba Yaga and the Golem, the 3 Fools of Chelm. I learned that the 3 Stooges was actually inspired by the 3 Fools of Chelm. I'm always learning new things in the books that I read. The 5th and last story in this book is set in contemporary times in the US, and it's an alternate history story. What would have happened if Hitler had not come to power? And yet, it's not necessarily a comfortable story because anti-Semitism is on the rise in that story too. I really like the art in here. Andrés, Vera, Martínez has done the art in another graphic novel that I read previously called Little White Duck by Neal, which I also recommend. And the colors that he's used in here are very somber, befitting a historic novel. And even the pages are sort of they're a speckled, darker background of paper. And the style that Martínez uses, he talks about at the back, he was inspired by Marvel Comics. So there's lots of action and adventure in here. And once I flipped back through, I could see what he meant. Those old Marvel Comics, her 2 important creators were also Jewish Americans. Anyway, in between each of these tales, there's a 2-page spread of true facts and what Neal Shusterman based those tales on. And I was particularly struck by one of them. This spread here, where I learned that the residents of Le Chambon-sur-Lignon, a Protestant village in southern France, helped thousands of refugees, most of them Jews, escape Nazi persecution between 1940 and 1944. And it goes on. But I had heard of this little village before because I know a man in Paris, Christian de Montbrison, and this is his memoir. And he has told me about the time when a period of time for about a year or 2 when he was living in Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. He was 13 when there was a busload of Jewish children who had been rounded up, and he and his classmates and the whole school actually were called out to try and stop the French officials, the Vichy government officials, who were sending these Jewish children off to a concentration camp. He said, there was a whole crowd of people around the bus, and he ran to the pension where he was staying and grabbed his most precious treasure, which was a matchbook with 2 pieces of chocolate in it. And he had wrapped those in foil paper, and he was saving it for him and his brother to share at some time when they really, really needed it. This was chocolate that had been given to him by his mother. Anyway, ran back to the school bus and put it into the hand of a boy who was in the bus. And then decades later, in 1995, I think it was, there was a gathering of people who had been in Chambon-sur-Lignon during those war years, and they had opened a number of these pensions with big tables for a feast for all of the invited guests, and Christian and his son David were attending. And they walked into one place. There were 2 place settings remaining, so they sat there. And as they were talking with people across the table from them, a couple who had come from the United States, he heard this man's story about how he had been in that bus. He survived, and his memory was about how an unknown boy had given him a matchbox with chocolate in it, and he was able to share that with his brother who was on the bus. A truly amazing story, and I reread it in this memoir, me thinking about Christian. It's been a few years now since I've seen him. We never know the effect that we're going to have on people, do we? Or the effect that our actions will have. So I love that story. True story. Next, I want to tell you about total speculative fiction. I'm talking about an audiobook that I listened to. Yours for the Taking by Gabrielle Korn. This one is a pretty soft pick for me, like 3.5 stars. What I really liked about it is the ideas. So it is feminist climate fiction. It starts out in 2050 and goes ahead to about 30 more years into the future. There are 3 queer characters that are the central characters in this book. 1 trans and 2 lesbians. But there's also a straight, white, feminist villain who's quite a one-dimensional character, kind of takes away, I think, from the story. But what it reminded me of is feminist utopias and dystopias that I've read in the past, and it's mostly the ideas and what Gabrielle Korn is exploring in this novel that kept me listening, as well as because it was an audiobook, that tends to kind of pull me through in stories that maybe otherwise wouldn't be engaging me in print. And the ideas that she's exploring in Yours for the Taking are eugenics, bodily autonomy, racism, classism, and transphobia. But not every book can be 5 stars, but we can still get interesting things from these books anyway, right? So this last book that I'm going to tell you about is the best of the bunch. It came out in 2023. I'm so glad I finally got to it. It's called Roaming by Jillian Tamaki and Mariko Tamaki. These are 2 Canadian cousins who have done some fabulous collaborative work in the past. This one is outstanding. The novel is about three friends who travel from Canada to New York City. I think it's set in 2009. And all of the little details of the wonder and the bewilderment, just being a tourist in such a fabulous, storied place as New York City. So these young women are attending university, and two have been longtime friends, but one is attending university in Montreal and the other one is in Toronto. And then the third person is new to the one who's coming from Toronto, and they fall for each other. So there's lesbian content there, and the whole thing about negotiating friendships and romantic relationships, plus the pressures of travel and having a short period of time to see as much as possible, staying in a hostel where there's inconveniences and other people around, being out on the streets where there's many other people around, the conversations we have with strangers, the conversations you overhear, it's all there. The stuff on the sidewalk, the pigeons, the cigarette butts, pizza crusts, the food that you eat when you're on holidays, and how everything is more intense, more special. It just brought me right back to my very first trip to New York City. That was in 1983. I was 23 years old. I was traveling with 4 queer friends, and we had a fabulous time. It just, this book just brought that all back, all the feelings that are there. The visit to the Met. Now, there's a 2-page spread for that, and it's like a Where's Waldo, where you have to search through to find the 3 characters, the 3 friends who were traveling, and where are they? And then larger, you can see various works of art from the Met, and it's kind of fun to identify those. And I was especially delighted to see that there was a Neolithic pot. And when I have been to the Met, when I've been to the Louvre and other art museums, the first things I want to see, the first section I go to is ancient Mesopotamia, or the pottery from that Neolithic to Bronze Age period. I don't know why I love it so much, but I do. And there it was, captured in roaming. Fantastic, fantastic book. Anyway, that is all I've got for you today. Thank you so very much for watching. Tell me if you've read any of these books. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them, and just your thoughts in general. Please say hello to me in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to say hello back. I know there have been some problems lately with YouTube not posting comments, or not notifying me that there are comments down below. I hope that's been sorted out, and if you've been one of the people experiencing those difficulties, thank you for being persistent and for trying a few times to leave a comment and succeeding, those of you who succeeded, as I love to hear from you. Anyway, bye for now.